Hello, and thanks for joining us for today's webinar where we're talking about the use of AI and how to get your data ready to use AI properly. Today I'm joined by Matt Collett, and Matt, do you want to say hello and introduce yourself?
Thanks, Simon. Yeah, so my name's Matt. I work for Datavault Builder as sales director. Datavault Builder is a data warehouse automation tool. Despite the name, we started off automating data vaults, but it kind of grew into an end-to-end solution for standardizing and automating your data warehouse and removing that need for hand coding. So everything that comes with that, increase in speed, performance, and decreasing in things like risk.
Thanks, Matt. And of course, for anyone who doesn't know, my name is Simon Meacher. I am the founder and managing director of Engaging Data. We're a boutique data consultancy, and we specialize in all sorts of data and analytics, AI programs, and we help companies to get ready to innovate and innovate more recently with AI. And that kind of leads quite nicely into my first question. So, Matt, over the last couple of years, we've seen an absolute ramp up in the need for companies to use AI, and more importantly, people trying to use it in their business. And it's gone from relative discovery, little things that they could try and do and bring into their businesses, little tiny snippets of AI coming in here, there, and everywhere. Now everyone's talking about agentic AI and ML, machine learning. What can they do to speed things up? And I think that's been a real transformational kind of swing in the market. What, in your experience, Matt, in the last couple of years, what are you seeing?
Yeah, very similar. I remember the first conversations having when AI started to become relevant, and often the questions we would be asked would just be, how do you integrate with AI, without any real kind of meaning behind that? Just, AI's becoming relevant and people wanting to understand how tools are integrating with AI. And that's definitely changed. So I very rarely get asked, how do you integrate with AI anymore? I get asked, we have this specific use case for AI. How can you help us get our data ready for that? So yeah, seeing a huge change.
And do you see a lot of companies rushing towards AI projects now, or do you think it's more of a considered approach?
Definitely considered. I think that actually it's not slowed down, but it's a more methodical approach, not just rushing into AI. I think people understand the whole importance for the data, a solid data foundation now to get the most out of AI.
That's really interesting. I see a blend actually on our side from people being considered, and maybe from your side it's they have the problem first. But very recently we've been talking to some companies where the remit's been giving out allowing employees to go and find AI and find AI tools and then bring it to the leadership if they think it's going to help in some way and sort of build out the business case. And they use it for the trigger points for as a trigger to enable the team members within the organization to help innovate and streamline and move forward, which in itself has its own risks.
So, Simon, our first question. So when leaders say we want AI, what do you think they actually mean?
It depends on the leader. So for me, there's sort of four types of leaders. The first one has AI in mind. It's the tool that they want to bring in. The second one, they've got a problem and they think AI is going to solve it. Then you've got the third type who have got an unrealistic expectation of what AI is going to actually do for them. Either sledgehammer to crack a nut, or they're trying to open the door with a teaspoon, something that doesn't quite fit. And then the fourth type of leader is somebody who's sort of absolutely understands what good looks like and knows where they're driving from a business standpoint. Probably doesn't care really if it's AI that's going to create the solution. And of course, there's always net leaders that have got segments or parts of all four of those personalities. But if you think about it, that first leader who's starting with AI, they really are the type that are kind of being taken along with the influence by market conditions. So they might be influenced by their industry, other competitors might be doing stuff, even more kind of marketing and getting convinced by big tech that AI is going to be the solution for everything. So they kind of lead with AI as the solution and then look for the problem to attach to AI, and that's okay, but that obviously, that lack of knowledge about what AI can do, or the term AI, because that's quite a broad term, can often lead people down the wrong path. The second one is people that just want to use AI for AI's sake. So they create things, they rush in very quickly and try and create things using the tools that might be available, some free tools, some more expensive tools, and they end up with things that don't quite hit the mark. And from that, I'm old enough, these grey hair should show you, I'm old enough to remember things like Clippy, the Microsoft prompt helper. And I can't help but laugh every time I bump into a chatbot that sort of looks like, feels like, sounds like Clippy, and doesn't quite drive through to what I want it to do. It doesn't quite help me in the way that it's being sold to me as it will help. And that's not the fault of the AI. That's often the fault of other things, like the data being used to train it, or the data used to help mature it and service me as a customer. And there are other businesses that are looking to streamline. So they've taken existing processes, HR processes, sales processes, and they've plugged in some AI operational savers, so things that can help, like maybe again prompts or chatbots or system improvements that can help streamline. But those things, if you rush into them, can help create frustration when there was none before. So you have a process that's trying to drive you in to do, submit some information in before you can continue, and you've already submitted it, or you've created a scenario that the AI doesn't quite know about, so it doesn't know how to respond to you. So then you get frustrated because you've always been able to do it a certain way, so there's lots of scenarios and situations like that occurring. And of course, then there's the use case for data entry and documentation. There's some great AI out there that can help users input data in a full way. But there's also the frustrating ones, the ones that give you irrelevant suggestions or provide you data that has no context in what you're trying to do, or the data you're trying to add into the system. And it then creates an overhead, because you've now got to not only add the data in, but you're thinking about what the AI is doing and whether that's right, and validating it as it's trying to help you. So again, these are sort of three examples of people that are kind of more rushing in with the AI and kind of rushing the solution without giving it full and proper thought. And then thirdly, there's these leaders that, again, they're looking for the AI to turn up and start predicting their analytics and for sales and demand on products and forecasting with the data that they have behind it. Or they've bought some sort of fraud detection AI to sit on top of their system so it can help tell them when there's potential fraud in their business. Or finally, the data-driven strategic planning. Can we just put AI on top of everything we've got and it tells us where to go and what to do? And some real unrealistic expectations of what AI can bring to the table. People think right now it's going to be plug and play. You just kind of get on with it and it's going to be really good. And of course, that's not often the case. And if you're trying to get to data-driven decision making, it doesn't really give you everything. It can give you a lot, but it doesn't give you everything that the expectations may have led to. And then finally, you look at the people that are in the leadership that are doing the best with AI. They are the ones that they start with the why. They understand what the business driver is, and they're trying to get the AI solution to address those solutions. So how do we reduce cost? How do we speed up processing? How do we eliminate repetitive tasks or human error so we can let the humans and the people in charge of the processes do the stuff that they're very good at?
Yeah, and I think that why that you mentioned is the big thing that I see that's really changed. So, I mean, I think, as I mentioned a moment ago, I've seen a change over the years of people just asking for AI without a real use case. And I think the why is the bit that's changed. It's the understanding of what that AI can do for them. We don't usually hear something like, "Oh, we want a model," or "We want Gen AI." What they're actually asking for is better decisions and more consistently and with confidence. And so I think leaders, they want to move away from decisions that are relying on that manual analysis and individual experts who know where the data is. And a bit like automation as well, I think AI, it feels like it could be the key. They feel like it could be the key to unlocking this. But I do think there is an expectation that AI is somehow going to simplify things. And so I think that you can layer intelligence on top of existing data and somehow unlock value. And I think actually in practice, AI doesn't simplify complexity; it just exposes it.
Yeah.
I think AI is a bit like an amplifier. If your data is well structured and well governed and historically reliable, I think AI can really accelerate that value. But if your data is fragmented and inconsistent or not understood, it's just going to magnify those problems and often at a much higher cost as well with more visibility. So when these leaders are saying we want AI, I think what they're actually saying is, we want to trust our data enough to let it drive decisions at scale. And that's ultimately a data foundation conversation before AI is the next conversation.
Yeah, and I think it could also be considered as we want AI is just the modern day term for digital transformation, right? What we were doing 20 years ago to bring everything from pay. I mean, I was in offices 20 years ago where the whole analytical job was on pen and paper, people going through with rulers and trying adding things up on a calculator and then moving it to a screen, getting into a dashboard.
I don't remember that, Simon. That was a bit before my time.
Well, I'm a lot older than you are, but but then there's so we're moving from that bit to now we want AI. It's just the next, it's like industry 2.0. This is just the set 2.0 version of digital transformation, which again, like you say, covers, it can create a lot more, expose a lot more of the problems to solve than when we thought we had in the first place. So, Matt, in your experience, from everything you've seen and customers that you help, what are the main causes for AI projects to fail?
So I think we're often a little bit before the AI project with Datavault Builder, but I mean what we do see is that there's AI initiatives are layered on top of the data platforms, and they were really designed for reporting, not for that continuous evolution. So as a business is changing, a new data source appears and definitions shift and things like that, things can start to break. So some very common patterns we encounter are the models are just tightly coupled to source systems, and so a small upstream change can actually cascade downstream issues. There's often no consistent way of capturing historical data, which means the models are trained on snapshots rather than a reliable view of how the business actually behaves over time. So I think another major issue is often ownership and definition, and different teams using the same term to mean different things, and AI doesn't cope well with ambiguity. So, if humans can't agree on what the data means, then actually it's very unrealistic to expect a model to produce trustworthy outcomes. Then with traceability as well, when someone asks a simple question like, where did this come from? The answer often involves a spreadsheet or tribal knowledge or some manual investigation. And I think actually without that clear lineage from source to output, it's your trust in AI erodes very quickly.
Absolutely.
I think the common thread across all of this, from our perspective, from what we're seeing, is that manual effort. So when data pipelines are hand built and manually maintained, or even with templates that are also manually maintained, they often just can be quite fragile by nature. So that they'll work until something changes, and in an AI driven environment, change is constant.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's the AI that's failing organizations. I think it's the AI is just exposing the limits of data architectures that were never really designed for that. They were just designed for more simple reporting. So, I mean, that's a use case that we're seeing our customers coming to. They want a data foundation that can absorb that change in a controlled way, and reduce that risk from your AI outputs.
Yeah, absolutely, and that technical aspect of approaching is definitely something we see. But we also see there's a strategic problem often with customers, and hence the reason why engaging data is here, because we see when companies go out to deploy an AI solution or start using AI, they often miss the target benefit. And that strategic one is really going back to my point earlier on about the leadership. What have the leadership asked for? What's their ambition? Is it realistic? Are they going to try and drink the ocean with a teaspoon? Do they understand the problem statement, and have they defined really clear, measurable success criteria about what AI is going to do and how it's going to change the business or improve the business? There's a lot of money being spent. The market's growing with the types of AI solutions that you can plug into your data. And there's a lot of money being spent testing little solutions, little new agents, new ML bots, things that are going on top of the data to try and improve efficiency more often than not, or to try and build customer experience. And I think businesses are starting to get really good at closing down these jobs, closing down these projects when they've been running too long and they've not necessarily hit. So when I'm saying that people are missing their targets, or sometimes they're not getting that far. They're just cutting the project short. They're starting an AI initiative and then closing it down when it hits their budgetary threshold, or it's been going too long and it's still not quite met the stakeholders' expectations. So that's a good thing, that companies are quicker to close down initiatives. From the technical aspect, from my side, just to sort of build on what you mentioned, Matt, I've seen in the projects we spend 60 to 80% of the project by itself is just about wrangling the data together. Where is the data? How do I bring it into one spot? Is it on-premise, off-premise? How do I get it into one spot ready for my AI solution to use, and then have I got the right context around it? Has it been built in a way that the pipelines are not going to break, and it's going to be efficient, and it's quick enough to service the solution with all the right historical data, as you mentioned, Matt, and ingested in the right time? There's a significant amount of time where people, when they plan their projects out, they've just missed that bit. And then that data management piece you mentioned is absolutely critical. The quality of the data, who's looking after it. It's a massive overhead, and it's not something that's just for the project. It's going to continue after the project's been delivered, and it needs to be formed as part of the culture of the business to enable the good data to continue on. That's an overhead that the company has to think about and implement for the long term. The longer you use AI, the more you're going to need these data managers to monitor and manage the data. And then you've got the technical compliance, as you mentioned, like the data lineage and all those good things that just, in lots of places, they don't exist. If you've got historical data warehouses or data pipelines, depending on how you've built them, you've either got something really detailed and never used because it's just too detailed to use, or you haven't got anything at all, or it's just that kind of very, very lightweight. So when it comes down to your data foundation, the other bottleneck that can be created is you have a team that's managing your data warehouse, your data lake, wherever your data is being pulled together. But that layer has been built in a way that doesn't really interact very well with an AI team. The AI team who are like using tools to quickly churn through build out agents, trying to build ML operations, in an ML DevOps kind of way, ML Ops way. That speed has a consequence, and the consequence is, does your data team have the resource and the bandwidth to service that demand? Because it's going to skyrocket if you don't control it. And then that has a knock-on effect on, does your existing team have the capability and the time to be able to not only support the existing platform, but firefight any new design requirements, assess the requirements and understand, yes, we can do this, no, we need to do that. Understand the requirement and what effort's required to fulfill that requirement, as well as developing the requirements that you've signed off already, as well as supporting the overall processing on a day-to-day basis. That is a big overhead that you will develop. And if your AI solutions are going up through the roof, your data foundation needs to have the bandwidth to be able to do that, or the speed to be able to react to that. And those downstream impact changes, that's where it starts to get to you. And we've seen this with things like dashboards and reporting layers over the years, where a new requirement comes in and it impacts your existing design pattern. You need to add in a new column to your Kimball. That was always my favorite one. We need to build a new column, add a new column to this historical table. It always hurt because yes, you can add it in, but what's it going to do to existing reports? What happens when somebody is changing a column that existed for ages, all that sort of stuff? The downstream impact of any changes becomes more of a risk to the overall operation. To kind of summarize all of that, I don't think the failures are down to the AI solutions at all. I think the failures are down to mostly poor planning. There's a lot to consider when you're doing a proper AI solution based on a very solid data foundation. There's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of things that when you're looking at this and you're setting out, you need to make sure you're building for the future and that you're able to continue to meet demand in a scalable, safe and secure way. This is why concepts like data lakes, real-time data streaming, semantic layers are gaining traction, because they're designed for the flexibility and scale that helps AI solutions move forward.
Yeah, which leads us nicely on to the next question, which is, why is it so important to have your data organized and structured? And I know we spoke a little bit about, why can't you just chuck all your data into a big lake or swamp? And then just put AI on top of it. So what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, again, this is about design. Like, if you'd asked Mrs. Meacher 5 years ago, is the house that I'm currently living in big enough for our family, she would have said yes. And now she wants an extension because it's not big enough. Requirements demand and demands always evolve. And what we're finding is a lot, as you mentioned earlier, Matt, there's a lot of existing data solutions, BI reporting solutions that have been built and are fit for purpose for what they do, but aren't necessarily designed to change going forward, or they're designed to work with AI. There's a lot of AI stuff that will organically plug into existing data, but there will be limitations using existing pre-designed platforms. And if you want to use AI properly, you need to create a foundation that's going to be able to adapt to AI. So your old monolithic, manually coded data warehouse, which has got loads of ETL pipelines or even ELT pipelines pulling data in from everywhere and churning it together into a star schema, may work perfectly well for your reports, but there's no guarantee that's going to work for an LLM that needs to be able to query certain things or understand the context or historical context. It may do, but then when you want to start using things like, well, show me the document attached to this. If you've got a sales dashboard and you want to see the invoices that have been sent out to the client and you physically want to see them, LLMs have got the function to be able to do that now. But your star schema is not going to have, the traditional way of making a star schema disconnects. It's structured data and unstructured data. So you kind of get those disconnects, which AI is helping us bring back together. So you know, I think, putting this together, when you're looking at building a foundation, you need to create the right agility within the platform to help you and enable you to change quickly. You need to pick a method of building your data together that helps to create all the data points as well as build all the context between the data points. So if you can do that, that will increase AI's ability to contextualize around the data points and produce more meaningful results, rather than some of these push together quick solutions that I've seen in the wild that have got fluffy data, fuzzy data, things that are kind of joined but not joined, or kind of together, not really structured well, and then you get that poor result and poor adoption. It's always possible to throw more money at these solutions, and I've heard lots of conversations with customers there. They're like, okay, well, can't we just put it onto a bigger server, throw more compute at it, try and link some of these things together? But then you're building, spaghetti on spaghetti. You're starting to solve the problem in a very financially unsustainable way, rather than trying to do it properly. So often you need to think about the long-term monetary value of your solution, and whether redesigning it into something that works is the best long-term strategic solution, and not trying just to pull a few levers to get you going. It might be all right for a proof of concept, but it's not a long-term solution. And we all know sometimes you can fall into the trap of, well, we've just got it good enough. It is expensive, but it's good enough. And then 5 years later, you're thinking, oh, we spent a lot of money on that solution. AI is just another craze exposing, really, like you said, Matt, that companies have got old ways of doing old data plumbing, and they want to modernize, they want to move forward, but they're getting caught out with that old plumbing not being fit for purpose for the new solutions.
Absolutely. And I think we kind of alluded to that in our previous question as well. And I think it's a bit of a common misconception that you can just collect enough data and AI is going to figure it out. And I think actually in reality, AI is not removing that need for the structure, and actually structure is more important than ever. I think we use the term swamp, in a data swamp, you've got huge volumes of data, but you don't have the context, you don't have the consistency. And I think, if you don't have those clearly defined relationships between the data points, AI is going to give you those unreliable outcomes.
Yeah.
And I think, AI needs meaning, not just data.
Yeah.
Needs to understand what things represent and how they relate and how they change over time. And without that, the models struggle to distinguish signal from noise. And then humans struggle to validate or explain the results. So I think a well-organized data architecture is providing that missing context. Yeah. It's capturing the history, it's preserving the relationships and making the data understandable. It's not just to machines, but to the people that are actually accountable for the outcomes. And I think that's what's kind of turning AI from just an experiment into something that actually you can reliably run in production.
Absolutely. AI is not magic, is it? It's not the silver bullet. It's not whatever term you want to put against it. It really does need the best structured data, cleanest as you can get it, contextualize. Otherwise, you don't get meaningful results. And I'm not talking about LLMs, or I'm talking about people who are even screening video data, pictures, processing different types of unstructured, semi-structured data. Unless it's organized properly, it's gonna create either an overhead that will cost you money or time, or it'll give you something that really impacts the adoption of the tool. And if you're going out trying to invest in AI to change your business, then you're going to need the highest return on investment. And return on investment is all about adoption. It's all about getting people bought in. And there's a lot of mixed feelings out there about AI. From an end user point of view, for me, it's all here to help. It's all a tool in your toolbox. It's a scientific calculator to a scientist. It's something that if you know how to use it properly and you know that you can put the good questions into it, you're going to get the right answers out. We just need to perfect that calculator a little bit. But in this way, in this world, all of the AI models all need good data, not only to be trained and to give you the right result, but also to be able to use that data to produce the result. So there's this like a double-edged sword we need to be careful of. And and to your point, Matt, AI experimentation, we're starting to see the sort of end of that phase now as people are starting to commercialize the AI solutions, and that's what's really going to drive value in the next sort of 12 to 18 months when companies start to really excel in implementing AI to drive their business value, whatever that might be, and increase their competitive edge. So Matt, I spoke about the adoption there and how important it is, but do you think it's possible to trust the AI outputs if the data model can't be kept up to date?
Well, you mentioned something that I quite liked as an analogy about the scientific calculator. And I
Yeah,
think trust in AI really comes down to two things: repeatability and transparency. And you need to have the confidence that if the same data flows in today and tomorrow and it's processed in a consistent and predictable way, um, is your equation on the scientific calculator the same answer both times? I think
yeah,
that's really important to trust your data. You need to also have the ability to explain what happened as well, not just not just to the technical teams, but to auditors and regulators and business leaders. I think, yeah, in those environments, it's not acceptable just to say the model produced this result. You need to actually show where the data came from, how it was transformed, which rules were applied, and how that output aligns with regulatory expectations. If you can't if you can't trace and explain your decision, then you can't defend it, and that quickly limits how far your AI can be used in production. And I think that requires some fundamentals like standardized ingestion and automated lineage and controlled, governed change.
yeah.
And they're not particularly exciting topics, but they're essential for your AI use cases. In terms of from our perspective at Datavault Builder, where we're helping our customers automate that, I think the alternative, could you do these things manually? In theory, yes, but I think actually in practice, it becomes unmanageable quite quickly. And I think automation helps you to scale that. Automation isn't just all about speed. We talk a lot about speed. Speed's an easy way to measure your ROI, but I think actually with this particular use case, it's about making trust sustainable as your complexity is increasing. And I think without that, organizations are just going to reach a point where they simply can't keep up with their AI ambitions.
I think you're absolutely right. I think I talk about it in adoption. Adoption is all about trust. People, if you don't get what you want out of a tool, you stop using it, and it doesn't matter whether it's AI, it's reporting, it's software. If it's not good enough, it doesn't meet your needs or your expectations, then you stop using it. And AI is one of those very expensive things that we could spend a lot of money on just to sit in the shelf, and I don't think we can afford to do that. And you mentioned a point about there's the building the model out and making sure you get consistent outputs, and that's the two. For me, that's the two aspects of AI. You've got the data that you use within the tool to answer the end user's question, and there's testing that you should do around that, and then that testing around the data used so that the LLM or whatever AI model you have is interpreting or understanding the context of the data, and will create a predictable formula, a repeatable formula, and then testing that always happens as well. And if you get if you get your data foundation right, then you actually simplify your AI solution. Because if your foundation has that really consistent, well structured, and well tested data, it creates like a safeguard or guide rails for your AI models to learn from. And that's what we want. We want to be able to utilize that to help drive adoption, drive trust in the end solution, and then that ultimately leads back to a positive return on investment. I won't say the best, because it's going to be different for every company, right? What is return on investment for that solution? But it's all about that. And again, going back to my earlier point, you need to have a setup, a framework over the whole delivery of these solutions to make sure you drive adoption that's going to last. You buy the right tools, you need to make sure you implement the right processes and procedures over those, and standards and governance, to make sure that any new model that comes out has been tested thoroughly, has been tested using a data set that you can evidence and audit and say what was there at that particular point when the model was being trained. All of those things, they're brand new concepts. They are not something that we've really done before. I've spoken before about sort of CI/CD, so continuous improvement inside of a DevOps approach to doing data modeling, and that's brilliant. But the data model doesn't really think about the data inside of the model, because that needs to be audited, and you need to understand where that is, and comes back to Matt's point about having good historical data. So you get one of those things wrong, you can create risk, and you want to remove all that risk to make sure the trust is inside of the data model, and therefore within the AI model.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've obviously spoken quite a lot about data quality and how important that is, but to take a little bit of a change in direction. So our next question is, you're a CIO on this journey, and what makes the difference between a leader and a follower? And is it FOMO?
Over the past few years, I've worked closely with small to medium size and even enterprise customers who are working through their own data products, data aggregation, just to try and ship all the data into the right place to create actionable insights, because that's what they wanted. They wanted actionable insights. Tell me about my, either retrospectively, or can I start predicting stuff? But in the past 18 months, the conversations are starting to change. It's all about competitive advantage. So I guess you could consider that as FOMO. Certainly one CIO I speak to on a regular basis, it feels like a boardroom FOMO. But I think actually it's more realistically reacting to what the market's doing around you. We're all potentially in different markets, and got different competitors with different appetites about AI, or even just digital transformation, and no company wants to be left behind. In reality, like I mentioned earlier, there is no silver bullet, but all we can do is look out to see what our competitors are trying to do, to see if that's going to win. We don't necessarily want to spend all that money to be on the bleeding edge of this. Sometimes we just want to be slightly further behind, start the initiative a month later, when we know it's going to add value or potentially not. And I've seen some, as I mentioned earlier on, I've seen some real funky stuff coming out with people trying things, experimenting it. But we've got to remember that AI might not be the best fit for everyone. We might try and build something that doesn't quite work in our market space. You could create something to try and personalize customer experience. But you have to remember, AI is good, but it's not beating the Turing test. It can still be tricked because it doesn't think it's simulation, right? So that's one of the things we need. This sales, marketing, campaign automation and AI that's out there, which is that space, that disruptive space, is starting to build companies that are competing against it to take that noise away and leave the humans with a nice quiet workspace so they can get on and do the work, rather than responding to the marketing and sales rhetoric that's coming through every channel we've got. The products that I'm seeing, though, the products and services, there are some really, really cool things. In particular, healthcare, medical sector, there are some really cool benefit to humanity kind of level AI that is very promising. There's also other things like in the unmanned vessel space, so whether it's like boats on the water, drones in the sky, cars on our street. There's some really clever stuff that's being created. For me, the really useful innovation is going to be the tool for humanity, the tool for humans, enabling the human to do the really creative or advanced innovation work quickly. In my head, and I realised this speaking to my 16-year-old son, Star Trek is kind of giving us our blueprint and our what good looks like. You know, it's talking to computer. You know, every single time one of those Star Trek people are talking to computer, it's to work out a problem. It's to talk in a very native, natural way to a computer who will then understand and then give you a potential solution. Do a calculation, but it's still the human that's doing all the clever stuff. It's still the human that's being strategic and creative. And that's where I see it. And like to my point earlier on about the scientific calculator to a scientist is even like a sheepdog to a shepherd. It's something that's just going to be a really useful tool. And that is where companies and CIOs, that's what they're looking for. They're looking for something that helps drive a competitive advantage by improving and enhancing all of the employees and people and processes inside of their company. So the real clever CIOs, when they're talking about we want AI, they're talking about a complete digital transformation that's going to help them change their business model, to build parts of their business model using AI-driven products or services. They're looking to redevelop their business model entirely to help service a brand new or maybe an existing market that they're already interacting with. And then sometimes it's about penetrating new markets, moving into new markets and using AI as the underlying tech savvy data or tech solution to burst into that market. But CIOs, they're in that precarious place right now where there is no silver bullet, there's no magic wand to make it happen. They're waiting for the AI to evolve, and they're waiting for their business processes and their data to get just right to service AI. And it's about keeping up, not missing out. It's about keeping up.
My brain instantly, when you said about the Star Trek example being what good looks like, this might be a bit of a UK only reference, but my brain thought, does that mean that Red Dwarf would be the what bad looks like for talking to the computer?
Nobody wants to be Rimmer.
No, absolutely. Yeah, so I mean, we regularly attend C-level, thought leadership events, and even if they're industry specific, it's all similar stories across the various industries. And I think FOMO is often the initial spark that gets the AI conversation going, but I don't think that's what's driving the long term success.
Yeah.
And I think from what I'm seeing, what really separates leaders and followers is how they respond once the pressure's on.
Yeah.
And I think followers are chasing an individual AI use case, one project that looks really promising and gets a lot of attention, but actually leaders are taking a bit more of a step back and ask approach, and okay, how can we make this repeatable? How do we support the next AI idea and the one after that, and not starting from scratch each time, templating that. So instead of optimizing for a single outcome, they're investing in their capabilities and their data foundations and automation and governance and all those things, and those are able to absorb change. And I think that's what's allowing an AI initiative to come and go without destabilizing everything underneath it, and that for me is what a leader is.
I think you're absolutely right. Building for the future, building to be agile, to scale. They are two critical parts for success. And look, CIOs are very, very good at building out initiatives and planning ahead. The real pressure, the real reason someone's a leader of a follower The real pressure comes from the marketplace. The real pressure comes from the shareholders or the people in charge of CIOs who are wanting to stay in front and actually getting your foundation right, getting ready to change or be able to change quickly is where the real success is. So we've spoken a lot about our general experiences. Matt, is there anything that any kind of innovation or exciting stuff that you've seen happen in the last 18 months?
Yeah, so one organisation we worked with in the manufacturing sector, they had a really ambitious AI roadmap, and they had a ton of use cases lined up across various, forecasting and customer segmentation, that sort of thing. They did a POC. The models looked really promising, but it soon became clear that with each use case, it was going to require a lot of manual effort and it was actually difficult for them to clearly explain where certain inputs were coming from or how they change over time. So it all looked good, but I guess the confidence in their outputs was quite low. So they came to us recognizing that need for some automation just to help prepare a solid data foundation for their AI, and because they were just finding that with every initiative they were stalling in the same place, and it was the data preparation that was the issue. They kind of made a conscious effort to pause the AI project and actually focus on their data warehouse. And they moved to this more sort of automated, scalable approach using Datavault Builder. In practical terms, that meant standardizing ingestion across the sources and capturing full historical context and automating the lineage. Once that was in place, the AI teams, they could actually kind of work independently, onboard data much faster, and really focus on improving the models rather than spending all their time rebuilding pipelines. The biggest shift was not just the speed, but it was the confidence. And I think, leaders could then trust the outputs, and explain them when they were challenged, and that scaled AI across the organization without constantly re-engineering the data layer.
You're setting up the future requirements to be sustainably fulfilled by that team. If you've got that kind of automation in place, and the humans are working on the models, and they're doing it quickly, then whatever happens in the future, whatever requirements come in, you've just already created a team that can respond quick enough.
Absolutely. And even through standardizing that automation element as well, it meant that as they brought on new employees as well, they were able to onboard those much quicker as well, so just the overall efficiency of all of it was greatly increased. But what about you, Simon? What do you think?
Obviously, like you, there are customers that unfortunately I just can't talk about, but what I can talk about is the customers we're helping getting ready for AI. So we have like an AI assessment that we can come in and help customers with. And from that, what we're finding is the same old, that the things that we've covered in today are becoming very pattern based across many companies in many different industries. It's things like siloed data unstructured in different places, business processes not being around. So we're helping customers to kind of start to frame up how they're going to deliver AI solutions, where the problems are going to be with collecting the data, how to frame up the delivery teams so that they can all work very consistently with each other. And that's where things like Datavault Builder comes in, because we can create and operationalize a highly performing team and not necessarily have a huge team. You can start small and scale, which is awesome. Because that way you can then create adaptability as well as future-proofing your data foundation. And then moving into how you structure your AI teams to work on the data set and on the data models. And there's a lot of common problems in companies and the way they've set themselves up, which, everyone should take some solace from that. Everyone's in the same boat. which is fine. But everyone also has the same opportunities to set themselves up for success in the future, just by taking a bit of time up front to understand where they are and where they need to go to, and then building the right foundations and frameworks to be able to deliver AI solutions successfully.
Yeah, absolutely.
To summarize everything we've spoken about today, I think it's really important that we don't consider AI as a buzzword. AI is the catalyst for digital transformation, or at least the next version of digital transformation. And we need to approach it with clarity and purpose, and like a very strong business case and business drivers to produce realistic solutions based on a solid data foundation. The biggest failures from me really come from the ambition, or if ambition outpaces strategy, or your data's not quite ready, or you haven't framed up your teams to work in a way that's going to help you scale, succeed, and respond to business requirements. AI, as we all know, will really, really thrive on clean and contextualized data with a robust data governance and compliance set around it. Cultural buy-in for AI, trust and adoption comes from having solid data foundation with all of those good things I've previously said. And there are no shortcuts. Shortcuts will give you some form of degradation in adoption and obviously your return on investment. AI is fragile when you build it on more traditional data systems. So make sure that you treat this as an opportunity. If you have got a pre-existing monolithic data warehouse or data lake which isn't structured, treat this as an opportunity to improve, and also a threat to any solution that's built on something that's not well structured. And invest the time to become flexible and scalable. Make sure your platforms and teams and tools are all set up for success. It is vital that you have the right humans in place to, with the right skill set, to really drive all the solutions and build real innovation. AI is not the magic wand to make things better. It is a tool, and it needs to help, or needs to be shaped for a particular purpose. If you get these foundations right, the possibilities are going to be endless for your organization, what you can do personally.